Hello, so I'm back and I just felt pulled or drawn to contemplate some more on this issue, this topic that we were discussing in a previous video. Something like the wild miracle found in the Garden of Eden. After I filmed that video, I did some dancing and I had a lot of thoughts about Eve and what really was the original sin that occurred. And I think it was death. I think that Eve brought death upon herself via the snake. And this is connected to The Snake in the Little Prince, that French short story that I think is quite predictive and quite reflective of humanity in a beautiful way. But I wanted to talk more and just meet and convene with spirit in this space with you guys and be present for this conversation. So I encourage you to be here with me now. Let's take a deep breath together. If you can, place 2 solid feet on the ground, steady yourself. Right now I feel like I'm in a pond. I feel like I am a goldfish in a pond. Like I'm the goldfish that jumped out of the bowl and I'm in this water and it's so expansive and it's like I can see the ripples of the water. I can see the movement of the water. You know that feeling when they try to do the underwater effect? That's what I felt for a brief moment. And I feel also a little bit nauseous, a little seasick. You know, it's kind of like that when you're in a vast area, a vast arena after being kind of enclosed in a space. If you've lived most of your life in a fishbowl, and then you jump out of that into even something as simple as a pond, or as, you know, it's not the ocean, but even the pond starts to feel like the ocean, you know, for someone who's only lived in a fishbowl their whole life. And I'm getting like a sense of like seasickness or nauseousness that I think comes with that extreme change in movement and the discomfort as your body begins to try to regulate and deals with the dysregulation of being in such a starkly different environment. So I feel that a little bit, as well as a little bit head spinny, but I think it's okay. So I want to know, Spirit, what do you want to bring forward for us to discuss right now? One of my favorite things about these flowers is how much they mimic insects. And that wouldn't usually be something I say because bugs can sometimes give me the creepy crawlies. But I guess it's the way they interact with each other, not being afraid to fall over each other. And it's often like that with plants. It's like people who live in big cities. You know, they're not used to personal space, so they don't have personal space. And, you know, you're just kind of on top of each other. But there's a liberty to that. There's a liberation to that because it creates intimacy and comfort with intimacy, comfort with closeness. And though it's, you know, the same can be said of like being in the ocean, it's so vast you can feel lonely. In big spaces you can feel lonely, but also in big spaces it's interesting that it also creates a bit of a tight-knit energy. And it's different from the enclosed space feeling of living in a small town or of being from a small fishbowl. It's a different kind of closeness that is created in a wide open space, in a large space, in a big city. It is special. It can be very special. the intimacy created. You know how people are like, people in small towns, you know your neighbors, you have each other's back. It's kind of like that in a city, but it's more of like a nationhood. When you live in a big city, it's like the same pride that people have, like national pride. That's the type of intimacy you develop with your neighbors in big cities. You might not really know each other, but you have each other's back at the end of the day, from like almost like an activism standpoint, from like a human rights standpoint. Like you'll all gather downtown and protest, You'll all come together and defend each other during a serious situation. You're not going to snitch if you see somebody, not paying their subway fare. Like, there's a different type of camaraderie, but there is still a closeness. And I think the type of closeness and intimacy that you see developed in big cities or in a big arena is similar to the type of closeness developed in a revolution. In the revolution, you're not going to know the name of your comrades. You're not going to know the name of everybody that you're fighting alongside. You're not going to know their history. You're not going to know why they're fighting. But you've got this tether. You've got this shared perspective, this shared experience that really unites you in a way that is profound and deep and meaningful, even if you don't know the in and outs of their life. You know something else. Something more meaningful, because it has really nothing to do with them. It has something to do with what connects you deeper beyond your specific human experience. It's a magical kind of bond that you get to have with people in big cities. And it has to be activated, though. Something has to activate that. When the ants are all crawling on top of each other, they're being activated by this desire, this will to strengthen their tribe, their community, by feeding and by gathering the materials for their queen and getting food to feed the babies. Like, they're activated. When people in a big city all come together, something's been activated. The way I'm moving these flowers, they're crawling on top of each other and piling in this way because I'm activating them. And there is some type of activation occurring in your life that is bringing about this stimulation that is creating like this collective energy, this collective uprising. And this is like one of a bigger story. This is not an individual reading, but more so a reading to speak to the whole. Something is occurring that is that will call all of us to come together and to become intimate with each other, to be bonded by a greater meaning, a greater story, a greater desire, probably connected to our humanity, and probably connected to a will to fight for the future. For the future, because isn't that always why people end up coming together? Because, like throughout time, all of the protests and all the activism, yeah, it was for right now. It was to create a better life now, but it was also to create a better life in the future. With revolutions, you never know how long it's going to take, but you fight because you hope that one day, the change will happen, or that your fight makes it easier for the next step to occur. Beyond that, you don't know what's going to happen, and it's very rare that things happen in the moment or in even your lifetime. But it's still incredibly meaningful, and I feel that there's some type of gathering and coming together that has more to do with the future rather than the now. There is work. Something is being built up, and people, I think, are beginning to be awakened and drived to engage with each other and build upon each other's steps. And it's creating this intimacy, it's creating this closeness, and it's creating contact. There's definitely contact happening and occurring, and it doesn't necessarily need to be super intimate contact, like you're meeting somebody and now you know their name. It's just that you're meeting people and you're gathering and you're connecting, and it could be that, the contact that is happening is that you meet someone, you overhear their conversation because maybe you're on the same subway, or you walk past somebody and they make you think of something. Someone's listening to a song and it makes you think of something. The way someone looks. It's just like we're all giving each other hints. we're all becoming engaged in each other's stories and helping each other to evolve. That's the type of frequency that we're in right now. It's really grassroots, you know, helping each other out just by living our own lives, but like allowing our energy to be open to being a vessel for spirit to deliver divine messages, divine awareness, divine intelligence through our own lives, through our own actions. We are, you know, helping be the signs and the synchronicities for others. And that's beautiful, because that is revolutionary, that is radical work, that is activism work. And, you know, it doesn't need, it's not even going to be, you know, I think very conscious for a lot of us. We won't know who we're affecting. We won't know who we're delivering the message to, but there's a piece of you that does know you're doing that work, a piece of your soul. And it might not be something that is aware on the conscious level, but subconsciously there's that awareness, and it's building towards something. What you're attempting to reach, I wonder if you're just working on strategy of how to build, because what I see here is like this energy of like building a ladder, you know, building a ladder, and you're trying to figure out how to build the ladder and make it so that nobody has to stay at the bottom. You know what I mean? Because I'm trying to get all these flowers to be able to create this line, but this line up, like this ladder up to the sky, this stairway up to heaven, but it's like I want all the flowers to be able to go. I want all the flowers to go. But with the ladder, it's like you have to have something that's holding this up. So it's like, what can we create that will hold this energy up, that will hold all of us up and make it so that nobody has to be the one that is the martyr and stays at the bottom. No one has to be the sacrifice that stays and remains at the bottom. You know, what can be created. And so I feel like what's happening right now is this is just trial and error, a trial era. We might be in a trial era of humanity where we are attempting to see how to build this connection or this gateway, this route, this machine, this portal that allows us to all get somewhere that we need to get to all level up. No one has to be the one left at the bottom. And so there's an attempt to do that. There's just this research process of trying to figure out how to do that. And it's coming through this action of like continuously, you know, climbing and on top of each other to build this ladder type of shape. This ladder type of thing. It's very, very interesting. And it's like every time that it falls apart, it's just more information. You know, it's just more information. And nobody, I think because I'm not sure how aware everybody is that they're doing this kind of work, that everybody's contributing to this kind of work. It works out better that way because nobody feels frustrated. Nobody feels like they don't want to do this anymore. They don't want to be the one at the bottom, or why does it keep, you know, there's no concept of failure, you know. But I do wonder if we are in a trial trial and error era on Earth right now. That would make sense. That would make complete sense to me. And I just wonder what idea is going to end up sticking. That is the interesting part of this. This is all very interesting, but that's an interesting caveat. But caveat means something different. There's a caveat. Oh, but maybe it doesn't have to be. It could even be that what ends up sticking is something that is applied unbeknownst to you, unaware to you, something that makes sense even though you don't understand why it makes sense. Because it's like language, right? Like you say a word and maybe you're making up a new word and you don't even know it. And this will become a word that's a part of everyday language 200 years from now. But right now you're saying it and it's like saying fetch. You know, when Gretchen says fetch and Regina's like, fetch will never happen. And like Gretchen doesn't know that she's creating something. You know, she's just speaking and making sounds. But little does she know it's going to become an established word. And isn't that just how anything happens? any type of norm or spiritual rule or law. It's just an idea, it's just an action until it becomes something with a name, something solidified, something with a meaning. And that just happens over time. And I wonder if this is that kind of development. Like perhaps this is the ladder. Maybe the action of trying to build the ladder is the ladder. And we don't know that yet because, you know, we haven't discovered certain spiritual concepts yet, certain intelligence. We don't understand something, a missing piece of information. But it's like perhaps the repeated action is the machine. Like that's the machine. The radical revolution. The revolution is this ability to like do this process, to exist in this type of way. And perhaps it reveals something, it relinquishes something within you that brings about like a new form of awareness. You know, I wonder. I think that would be pretty cool and interesting. And I do think that would make sense. Because it's like we evolve in natural ways, you know, and I think oftentimes with sci-fi storytelling and magical storytelling, you know, we make humans into things that we're not. And, you know, we tell each other that in order for us to become magical or to become futuristic, the future people, we need to have wings. We need to have things that aren't natural to us. When in reality, it's probably just continuous action towards change that becomes the evolution. You know, that's what becomes the next generation. That's what awakens a newfound power. You know, the continuous action towards creation without, you know, superpowers, you know, just through human action. That's what ends up creating magic. And perhaps there's an acceptance of humanity here. You know, there's an acceptance of the fact that it seems as though perhaps someone will always be at the bottom. And with that acceptance, we just all fall to the bottom because there is an inability to accept that anyone should be left behind. And so that in itself creates the ascension, creates the awakening, creates the ladder. You know, this idea that we will all fall, that we will just all fall and continue to climb and fall again, not accepting the limitations that come with the perceived limitations that come with humanity and with, you know, the process because of what we have and what we don't have and what we know and what we don't know. That in itself, that refusal creates the next generation, creates the evolutionary spirit. And I wonder if it doesn't take quite long. If it doesn't take long, it just sort of happens without you even really knowing it. And that's the magic will. That's the secret sauce, you know. That's how things become undone. That's how the undoing begins. Just this relinquishing of this refusal spirit, this refusatory spirit that just wakes up within you and says, no more, you know, no more to the sacrifices. I won't sacrifice myself. I won't sacrifice my brothers and my sisters. I will continue to build even when it seems impossible, like there is no way, there is no system. And just that continuous action is the system. That is the system. That is the creation of the new system. Putting your heart and your energy and your mind towards something that seems impossible. That's how you create it. That's how you create the impossible, by putting your mind and your energy towards it. And that's the thing about impossible. It doesn't actually need to be created, because impossible is one of the wildest forms of magic. All you have to do is engage with the impossible idea and it becomes. And it never has to actually physically manifest because it's impossible. So impossible implies that it will not physically manifest, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just won't physically manifest, but it still can happen. And because impossible implies that, it already says that within its name, within its nature, that makes it so that like the earth is like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. Like it's impossible. So it doesn't physically manifest, but we still have impossible in other in other forms of existence that can create and that can awaken to become a reality on earth, even if it's not the physical. So you can still have this impossible energy come to life and become and be without having to actually have this physical existence, which is great news for these humans that are working this way, because you won't need to build it. You know, you believe it and it will be. You believe it and it will come. You work and you try and you give and give towards it, and it will occur naturally. And I think that is really exciting. And that's really exciting, and it's a sensitive kind of energy to be dealing with. But it's a beautiful kind of energy to engage with impossible. You're naturally engaging with the non-physical. Yeah. I wonder if that's kind of it. I think that's it for this reading, and I don't think I necessarily need to pull cards. I could, but I don't think it's necessary. And sometimes you should just let things be. So I'm going to do that. Thank you. Goodbye.